Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to work with global variables in Lula Build. So when modeling an estimate, it's quite common to use certain constant values or common factors in all of your calculations. And ideally, you'd want to be able to edit those constants in one place and then automatically all of your calculations will be updated accordingly. So Lula Build's global variable C module offers the tooling to achieve this. So as you can see, my global variable list is currently empty, but I can easily create a new global variable simply by clicking the plus add button at the bottom of the table. This will then create a new variable and launch the variable editor. So let's say, for example, I want to model the number of working hours per day, seeing that I'm going to be using that in my calculations in a few different places. So a global variable has an identifier, which is basically going to be the name or symbol that will be used in the calculations to refer to this variable. It's got a description, and then it's got an expression where you can either fill in the constant value or any mathematical equation that represents the value of this variable. Alright, so seeing that this is the working hours per day, I'm going to give it an identifier of H and a description of working hours per day. And let's give it an expression of 9. Okay, so we're working 9 hours per day. Okay, so I can now use this variable in any of my calculations. So I'm going to switch over to my clusters. And I've got two plant clusters, my TLB cluster and my Whacker cluster. And in both of these clusters, I use the number of working hours per day as part of their calculations. Right, but currently it's just specified in there as a number. So if I want to change the working hours per day, I would have had to have gone into both of these clusters and edited those numbers manually. So this is not only time consuming, but it can also lead to errors. So a better way of doing this is rather modeling those numbers with variables. So I'm going to multiply this then with H. And note that wherever I use a variable in my calculations, it's got to be wrapped in these sharp curly braces. Okay, so let's just edit the TLB cluster to also use H. Okay, so if I go back to my variable scene, if I want to now change the number of working hours per day, I can simply edit this in the table and change it from 9 to 8, and automatically the allowable of my TLB and the allowable of my Whacker has been updated accordingly. Alright, so that's a very efficient way of modeling certain common factors and constants in your project. Okay, another thing that variables are very useful for is modeling what we call switches. So let's take the example where you've got a project where you can either supply and install or only do install work for the bill items. So in that case, you can use a switch, which is either 0 or 1. And multiply that with certain line items in your calculations. And if you switch flip the switch between 0 and 1, you can either include or exclude those line items in your calculations. Okay, so let's do that as an example. So I'm going to create a new variable, which I'm just going to call include material supply. And I'm going to leave that as 1, meaning that materials is included in my price. And I can jump over to my bill of quantities. And let's, as an example, go to the plastering of my interior wall. And here I've got the installation, my labor, and I've got some materials. So I'm going to multiply this calculation with that new variable I of mine. Okay, so seeing that I is currently 1, it means we're including the materials in our price. But if I jump back to my global variables, I can switch that over to 0. And now automatically you'll see that that calculation is zeroed out and the materials are not included in my final price. Alright, so switches are a very convenient way for you to quickly analyze and compare different ways of building and constructing a project. Right, and variables don't only allow you to use constants or math equations, they also allow you to use other variables inside of their expressions. So let's say we want to model a double shift. We can very easily just create a new variable ds, call that double shift, and say that is 2 times our working hours of the day, done, and automatically that is calculated as 16, and you can use that now in any of your calculations as well. Alright, so as you can see, variables offer a convenient and powerful way of modeling certain common constants and factors in your project, and you are encouraged to use them where fit. Okay, thank you. That's all for today, and until next time.